Good morning, everybody, and welcome to day two at the world's most important and largest real estate gathering in Las Vegas, ICSC Las Vegas 2024. I'm Adam Ifshin, the founder and CEO of DLC. It's my pleasure right now to be joined by, first and foremost, a dear friend and fellow warrior in advocating for the industry, the president and CEO of ICSC, Tom McGee.
Hi, Adam. Great to be with you.
So, Tom, you're joining me here on what I like to refer to as the civilized day of our conference, which features a day and a half of bedlam before the show opens, and then Monday, and then, of course, what I call the civilized day, or Tuesday. I thought it was a good time for you and I to get together and take stock a little bit about how you and I see the state of the industry right now, call it for the next 12 months.
Well, I think, first of all, it's great to be with you here at ICSC, the world's largest commercial real estate conference. I think the state of the industry is very, very strong right now. If you would have closed your eyes during the middle of the pandemic and imagined where the industry might be at the end of the pandemic, a few years after it, you might have expected something different than what we're experiencing today, which is a very, very strong industry. We were at the epicenter of the pandemic, obviously, but so many things happened during the pandemic to accelerate trends that were already taking place. But today, if you look at the demand for physical retail, it's incredibly strong. The supply is obviously constrained. There hasn't been a lot of construction, net new construction, over the course of the last 15 years or so since the great financial crisis. And just to give a couple statistics around that, since the great financial crisis, retail sales in the United States have almost doubled. US GDP has grown by close to 40%. Retail square footage in the United States has grown by just a little over 6%. So you've had demand grow, you've had retail sales grow, but you haven't had retail square footage grow. And of course, retailers are now, and this is one of the byproducts of the pandemic, an acceleration of a trend, retailers are not just using stores for conventional shopping purposes to serve their customers, but also often increasingly using them as mini fulfillment centers. And so the demand for space is quite high. The supply of it is constrained. And I kind of see that continuing for a reasonable period of time because of the cost of capital and the cost of construction and so forth. Obviously, we'd love to see more construction, but I think it's going to take a little bit of while for the supply to catch up with really, really strong demand.
All right, look, we see on a micro level what you and the team at ICSC do such a good job of tracking on an industry-wise. You could come through this booth the last 48 hours and that's all happening in real time. Space is getting taken up. Space that was hard to lease or less desirable is now the final piece of space in a center, and national tenants are flexing specifications, prototypical sizes, dimensions to access that consumer. You are so good at this. You raise the right thing. For years people said that our industry was under attack. But since the global financial crisis, retail sales doubled in America, even though GDP is only up 40%, which means that retail has become an even bigger part of our overall economy. We have seen for years, even with that modest amount of space growth, that actually we believe that space available for leasing to retailers has actually shrunk. As spaces come out of the system, as obsolete retail has in some places turned into mixed use, it's turned into self-storage, it's turned into medical and a myriad of other uses. We see significant across the board increases in the four metrics that we focus on the most, which are traffic, sales, occupancy, and rent. We continue to struggle with construction costs as everyone does, but I'd be interested to see what you and the team at ICSC think. We do not see metrics that support new construction. We don't believe that construction costs will ultimately actually nominally decrease. They seem to have flattened. What are you guys in the research realm of that seeing?
Yeah, I think we're aligned with your thinking. I think we're living in, but inflation has proven to be sticky, first and foremost, right? So, and construction costs are obviously a byproduct of that stickiness of inflation, and there's also just the issue of availability of not just raw material, but also people, skilled labor.
Labor is a big challenge.
Yeah.
We know that.
And I don't quote me on this, but the average age of a plumber in the United States is somewhere in the mid 50s, I think. So there's a whole skilled labor shortage that's taking place in the U.S., and then you add on the cost of capital. If inflation's going to be sticky, obviously interest rates are probably going to be higher for longer. I take the Fed at its word. So I think it's unlikely you're going to see dramatic increases in the supply of physical retail because of those factors. And even if you did, even if today there was a building boom, it takes a number of years for that to come online. So I think we're going to live in this kind of back to the basic laws of economics, supply and demand mismatch that's taking place right now. And so as a result, there's going to be an increasing appetite for space that may have been not as desirable in the past. I will say one thing about the narrative around retail that took place, pre-pandemic, the so-called retail apocalypse. And a lot was happening under the radar there in the evolution of the industry. But even if you took all that at face value and just looked at the facts, the numbers. So since the great financial crisis, every year except one through today, both e-commerce retail sales and physical retail sales grew. So even in the midst of a period of time where e-commerce was growing at a significantly more rapid rate on a smaller base than physical retail, and every year physical retail sales grew positively. There's only one year it didn't, 2020. Right. And of course, there's a reason for why it didn't grow in 2020, and then of course it rebounded significantly after that. So the so-called retail apocalypse never really happened. And in some ways, the industry, by a number of factors, some of which pushed upon it, some of which just being good business people, moderated the, putting more supply online during that period of time.
Well, certainly we felt that oddly, and you and I spoke weekly in 2020. I had the privilege of seeing Tom in action, who was just an exceptional wartime CEO.
Oh, thank you.
In 2020. Well, there are not many businesses, and even as a board member, it was hard to fathom. There are not many businesses, even in the pandemic, where revenue went to zero. And you led ICSC through a time where we probably had, $75 million in revenue in 2019. We probably did in excess of 200 live in-person events. And it went to zero. And I think at that time, we were talking, the board, you had the board meeting remotely, weekly. It was a wartime council kind of deal. I think all of us were extremely impressed. You at that point had been in the business about 5 years. You had transitioned, you had come in the business as our CEO about 5 years ago. Does the incredible breadth and depth of the rebound from that low point in, call it, April, May of 2020, are you surprised? Does that still surprise you? Because it's oddly, the discipline that it created has, to me, driven this extraordinary. How do you think about that part?
It's kind of. There's nothing good about a pandemic, obviously, right? So,
I think we can all agree on that one.
but what the pandemic allowed for the industry and for ICSC, really, as a byproduct of what's happening in the industry, is an opportunity to make some changes, to accelerate a number of things that may have taken 10 years to do or 15 years to do in a very short period of time. So it allowed us to become much more member-centric, much more nimble, allowed us to really rethink kind of our core service offerings and how we deliver them to our members, and to build some really close relationships during that period of time. And that's, we are a people business. We're a service organization, really. So having close relationships with people like yourself and others in the industry, I think is super important. And going through an experience like that as an industry, I think created a bond and a revitalization of fundamentally what ICSC is all about. And yes, we have big events and all of that, but ultimately our core value proposition is we bring people together. We're a networking organization. We bring people together, network ultimately to help them grow their businesses, help them thrive. And I think there was as a result of the pandemic, there was kind of a re-recognition of how that value proposition again, because it was taken away from us, right? So,
Yes, I think that's true.
And so now it's back, and we realize, well, it was something that's real valuable that maybe was taken a little bit for granted, and quite frankly, the way ICSC as an organization was delivering, it may have become a little stale. It allowed us to rethink some things, but that core value proposition of people coming together and networking, I think there was a recognition of how, when you lost it for a period of time, how valuable it was when it came back.
Well, all you have to do is look at the overflow in every together venue associated with the event, whether that's outside of a panel discussion on Sunday in the Learning Center at the Wynn, or people talking before the keynote speaker or the reception thereafter, the overflow in the bars and restaurants. It was very difficult to find a place to watch my beloved Knicks regrettably run out of gas in Game 7 because it was so crowded. But let's talk about our Las Vegas event, this signature event. And for years, when I was a board member, people asked me all the time, well, how many people are coming and how many booths are there? And it's obviously a very, very different offering for the members than it was before the pandemic. It is a smaller group.
Yeah.
How do you and your team think about judging what success is for doing an event this involved, this elaborate, this big?
Well, first and foremost, I don't think you should judge ICSC and myself. I don't judge success by the number of people that go, because
I would agree with that.
That's just a metric, and that's about a number. What really it's about are the folks that are here getting value out of being here. Is it accretive to them? Do they feel like being here was a great, worthwhile investment of their time? And I think generally people do, at least in all the feedback that I'm getting. And we'll have about 25,000 people here, and the people that are here are engaged in the industry, so there's not people that are just outside of the industry coming. And
the hangers-on.
Yeah, these are people that are really engaged and focused upon retail real estate and perhaps other sectors that are complementary to retail real estate. And so that's how I judge success. Is it a value? And then one of the other questions we got a lot before the pandemic was, well, the live events, the new generation, the young generation isn't going to value going to live events. Well, that's actually proven to not be the case. The next generation really does value live events. They want, perhaps because so much of the world's become virtual, ICSC events around networking have become quite attractive to the younger generation. Generally speaking, at all of our events, about half the people in attendance are of next generation. And about 40% of every new member of ICSC is a next generation, 40 to 50%. So that next generation membership is attending our live events at a greater percentage than they are as a percentage of the membership. And then you look at
that's a great metric.
That tells you that the younger generation is getting value out of this, and it's the larger events, but also the local events too. The local events, we throw about 100 local events this year, and they're all oversubscribed. They're all, we expect 100, 200 people show up. We expect 200, 400 people show up. So there's a great demand for that. There's a thirst for getting people together, and that's what we, at our core, yes, there's lots of booths, there's all that, but at our core, we're a networking organization. We bring people together.
I think this is so important, and I think it bodes exceptionally well for the future of the industry. I'll never forget, right before the pandemic, at a board meeting, you showed all of us a slide about how at the time, the general working population in America was 34% comprised of millennials and Gen Z and growing. But the industry, as judged by the membership of ICSC at the time, maybe this is 2017, 18, somewhere in there, was only 18% millennial and Gen Z. And it was a watershed moment for me in my business, and just a little part of how much value I've gotten from being involved as a volunteer for a very long time in ICSC, to have access to that. We retooled our entire approach to recruiting people after that, just from that one slide. And we are now 50% millennial and Gen Z at DLC, and that was the creator and the driver of that. It was a very tangible thing that my leadership, I went back to my leadership team, and my leadership team and I were able to take away, to hear that that is the same rough metric of who's coming to the events, I think speaks really, really well about the future of the industry. So real quick, we're going to close here, but do you have any final thoughts for everybody about sort of how you see the industry further out and how you're feeling about that?
I'm feeling really good about the industry, and we talked about the supply-demand mismatch, but I'm also feeling good about the talent that's coming into the industry, to your point. I mean, we have so much young talent coming into the industry, and we're trying to do things at ICSC to really nurture that, help young talent, bring young talent into the industry, but also once they're in the industry, help them thrive and succeed. So we have a whole new rebirth of our Next Generation program. We have a Next Gen Leadership Network. And then everything we're doing in the ICSC Foundation around recruiting students and so forth. We had 475 students from 102 universities at this event this week.
A bunch of them came here. A bunch of our Project Destined alumni came here. Our first scholarship intern from the first year of Launch Academy is a full-time employee at DLC now, going on almost 3 years. So I think that, look, you've remade, and you've had a lot of support. You built a new team. You had support from the board and other volunteers, but you have remade ICSC in so many ways. But the remaking of the foundation, I think, is so important. I hope that more ICSC members understand it and take advantage of those offerings and encourage young people, particularly young people who didn't grow up with connectivity to the industry, to take advantage of that. We have made, and we will continue to make, not only monetary commitments to the foundation, but we've also made what I think is more important, which is a commitment of our team and our talent to participate as learning people who help educate, mentor, provide internship and shadowing opportunities. The breadth of what the foundation is doing now under your and Lori's leadership is really tremendous. So I want to thank you on behalf of the membership for that. It's been a pleasure having you here. I appreciate you taking the time. It is obviously your Super Bowl. And just so you don't know, Tom is a huge sports fan. So when you say it's the Super Bowl, he really means it. Yeah. So thank you, my friend.
Oh, Adam, it's
a
always
pleasure.
A pleasure to spend time with you. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
For having me.